Picture a massive warship cutting through dark ocean waters, its deck alive with the coordinated movements of sailors from a dozen different nations, each speaking different languages, yet operating as one unified force. This is not science fiction. This is the reality of modern naval warfare, where the challenges we face are too vast for any single nation to handle alone. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most sophisticated military achievements of our time: how the United States Navy orchestrates coalition operations with allied fleets across the world's oceans, creating a naval force unlike anything history has ever seen. The story of multinational naval task forces represents a fascinating evolution in military strategy, diplomacy, and international cooperation. It's a story that spans decades of careful relationship building, technological integration, and shared sacrifice on the high seas. To understand where we are today, we need to go back to where it all began. The concept of naval coalitions isn't new. Throughout history, nations have banded together when facing common threats. But the modern framework we see today has its roots firmly planted in the aftermath of World War II. When that devastating global conflict finally ended in 1945, the world's naval powers recognized something profound. They understood that the oceans connecting our continents could no longer be patrolled or protected by isolated national fleets operating independently. The threats were too mobile, too widespread, and too technologically advanced. The formation of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization in 1949 marked a turning point. NATO wasn't just a political alliance. It represented a commitment to collective defense that extended across the Atlantic Ocean and beyond. For the first time in peacetime, naval forces from multiple nations began training together, developing common procedures, and creating the framework for what would become modern coalition naval operations. During the Cold War years, the U.S. Navy found itself at the center of a complex web of alliances. The Soviet naval threat was real and growing. Soviet submarines prowled the depths of every major ocean. Their surface fleet expanded rapidly. This wasn't a challenge that America could meet alone, no matter how powerful its navy became. The solution required partnership, coordination, and a level of international military cooperation that had never been attempted during peacetime. Admiral Arleigh Burke, who served as Chief of Naval Operations during the crucial years of the 1950s, understood this reality better than most. He pushed for increased naval exercises with allied nations. He advocated for standardized communication procedures. He recognized that future conflicts would require navies to work together seamlessly, sharing intelligence, coordinating movements, and executing complex operations as a unified force. His vision laid the groundwork for everything that would follow. The Vietnam War provided early lessons in coalition naval operations, though on a smaller scale than what would come later. Australian, New Zealand, and South Korean naval forces operated alongside American ships. They learned to coordinate gunfire support, carrier operations, and logistics in a combat environment. The challenges were immense. Different radio frequencies, incompatible communication systems, varying tactical doctrines. Every problem identified became a lesson learned, feeding into the development of better coordination systems. But it was the Cold War's cat-and-mouse game in the world's oceans that really drove innovation in multinational naval cooperation. The U.S. Navy established formal agreements with allied fleets, creating the framework for rapid information sharing. They developed common tactical publications so that a British destroyer and an American cruiser could execute the same maneuver using the same terminology. They established liaison officer programs, embedding officers from one navy aboard ships of another, building personal relationships and mutual understanding that would prove invaluable in crisis situations. The end of the Cold War didn't reduce the need for coalition naval operations. If anything, it expanded it. The 1990s brought new challenges: regional conflicts, humanitarian crises, piracy, drug trafficking. The threats became more diverse, more unpredictable, and more dispersed across the globe. The U.S. Navy's response was to deepen and broaden its partnerships with allied fleets. The Gulf War in 1991 showcased the power of coalition naval forces in a way the world had never seen. Ships from the United States, United Kingdom, France, Italy, Spain, Netherlands, Belgium, Norway, Denmark, Greece, and several Arab nations operated together in the confined waters of the Persian Gulf and the Red Sea. They enforced a maritime blockade against Iraq that was remarkably effective. They launched cruise missile strikes. They provided air defense for ground forces. They They executed mine-clearing operations in dangerous waters. And they did it all while coordinating across multiple languages, time zones, and command structures. The success of that operation wasn't accidental. It was the result of decades of planning, exercises, and relationship building. American liaison officers aboard Allied ships and Allied officers aboard American vessels ensured smooth communication. Common tactical procedures meant that ships from different nations could operate in the same battle space without constant coordination. Shared intelligence systems allowed all coalition partners to maintain the same operational picture. It was a masterclass in multinational naval cooperation. But the Gulf War also revealed gaps and challenges. Communication systems still had compatibility issues. Some nations had restrictions on what operations their forces could participate in. Rules of engagement varied between coalition partners. Intelligence sharing hit classification roadblocks. Every success came with lessons about what needed improvement. The U.S. Navy took those lessons seriously, incorporating them into the next generation of coalition operations planning. Throughout the 1990s and into the early 2000s, the U.S. Navy invested heavily in interoperability with Allied fleets. This meant more than just compatible radio systems, though that was certainly part of it. It meant developing common software standards for combat systems. It meant creating joint training programs where sailors from different nations learned together. It meant establishing formal command structures that could incorporate forces from multiple countries seamlessly. The Combined Maritime Forces, established in 2001, represented a new model for sustained coalition naval operations. Headquartered in Bahrain, this organization brought together naval forces from dozens of nations to conduct maritime security operations across a vast area stretching from the Suez Canal to the Pakistan coast. Unlike previous coalition arrangements that formed for specific conflicts and then dissolved, Combined Maritime Forces was designed to be permanent, adapting to new challenges as they emerged. Let's talk about how these operations actually work on a day-to-day basis. Imagine you're the commander of a multinational task force patrolling the Arabian Sea. Your flagship is an American destroyer, but your task force includes a British frigate, a French anti-submarine warfare ship, an Australian supply vessel, a Japanese destroyer, and a South Korean corvette. Each ship has its own national chain of command, its own rules of engagement, its own political considerations. Yet you need them to operate as a single, cohesive fighting force. How do you make that work? It starts with the command structure. Modern coalition task forces use a carefully designed hierarchy that respects national sovereignty while enabling unified command. The overall task force commander, often an American admiral or senior captain, has tactical control of the force. But each ship remains under the ultimate authority of its national command. This means the task force commander can assign missions, designate patrol areas, and coordinate operations, but individual commanding officers retain the right to consult with their national authorities on sensitive matters. Communication is the lifeblood of these operations. Modern coalition task forces use multiple overlapping communication systems to ensure information flows freely. Encrypted satellite communications link the task force to regional command centers. Secure data links share radar and sensor information between ships in real time. Common radio frequencies allow for voice communication during operations. But beyond the technology, successful communication depends on people. Liaison officers from each nation work in the Task Force Operations Center, ensuring that language barriers don't impede understanding and that cultural considerations are respected in operational planning. Intelligence sharing in coalition operations requires a delicate balance. Nations protect their most sensitive intelligence sources and methods, but effective operations demand that partners have access to actionable intelligence. The U.S. Navy has developed a sophisticated system of information sharing agreements with close allies, creating different tiers of access based on the sensitivity of information and the closeness of the relationship. This allows for near real-time intelligence sharing with core partners while still protecting critical sources. One of the most impressive aspects of modern coalition naval operations is the integration of combat systems. When an American Aegis destroyer, a British Type 45 destroyer, and a Dutch frigate are operating together, their radar systems can be networked to create a single, comprehensive air picture. This isn't just about technology, though the technical achievement is remarkable. It's about trust. It's about nations being willing to integrate their combat systems so deeply that they depend on each other for their most basic military function, detecting and tracking potential threats. Training is where the foundation for successful coalition operations is laid. The U.S. Navy conducts dozens of major exercises with allied navies every year. Rim of the Pacific, known as RIMPAC, is the world's largest international maritime exercise, held every 2 years near Hawaii. It brings together navies from more than 20 nations for complex scenarios involving anti-submarine warfare, surface combat, amphibious operations, and humanitarian assistance. These exercises aren't just about practicing tactics. They're about building relationships, understanding how different navies operate, and identifying problems in a training environment where mistakes don't cost lives. The U.S. Navy's International Programs Office manages a vast web of relationships with more than 50 navies around the world. Some of these are close, daily working relationships with major allied fleets like those of the United Kingdom, Australia, Canada, and Japan. Others are developing partnerships with nations building or modernizing their naval capabilities. Each relationship is unique, tailored to that nation's capabilities, strategic interests, and political situation. But all of them contribute to the broader goal of maritime security through international cooperation. Technology transfer and foreign military sales play a crucial role in coalition operations. When allied navies operate American-made equipment, whether it's radar systems, missile launchers, or entire ships, interoperability becomes much easier. The U.S. Navy works closely with American defense contractors to support foreign military sales that enhance coalition capabilities. This isn't just about selling weapons. It's about creating common platforms that enable seamless operations and building long-term relationships that extend beyond any single government or administration. Let's examine some specific examples of recent coalition naval operations to see how all these systems work in practice. The counter-piracy operations off the coast of Somalia, which began in earnest in 2008, brought together naval forces from an unprecedented number of nations. At its peak, ships from the United States, European Union nations, NATO members, Russia, China, India, Japan, South Korea, Singapore, and many others were all operating in the same waters, pursuing the common goal of protecting merchant shipping from pirate attacks. This operation presented unique challenges. Some nations were formal allies. Others were strategic competitors or even adversaries in other contexts. Yet in the waters off Somalia, they found ways to cooperate. They established communication protocols. They divided patrol areas to maximize coverage without duplication. They shared intelligence on pirate activity. They coordinated their responses to attacks. The operation succeeded not because everyone agreed on everything, but because they found common ground on the specific mission at hand. Piracy in the region dropped by over 90%, a testament to what coordinated international naval action can achieve. The ongoing freedom of navigation operations in the South China Sea represent another dimension of coalition naval operations. These operations, designed to assert international law and the right of free passage through international waters, increasingly involve not just American ships but vessels from allied nations. When a U.S. destroyer sails through disputed waters accompanied by ships from Australia, Japan, and the United Kingdom, the message is more powerful than any single nation could send alone. It demonstrates that the principle of freedom of navigation isn't just an American concern, but a shared interest of the international community. In the Mediterranean Sea, coalition naval operations have focused on migration control, counterterrorism, and enforcing arms embargoes. Operation Sea Guardian, a NATO maritime security operation, involves ships from multiple alliance members patrolling these historic waters. They conduct maritime situational awareness missions, tracking vessel movements and identifying suspicious activity. They engage with coastal nations to build their maritime security capabilities. They stand ready to respond to terrorist threats or other security challenges. The operation requires constant coordination between participating navies and with civilian authorities in the region. The Western Pacific presents perhaps the most complex environment for coalition naval operations. The U.S. Navy maintains close working relationships with the Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Force, the Republic of Korea Navy, and the Australian Royal Navy. Together, these forces conduct sophisticated exercises and operations focused on deterrence, maritime security, and maintaining stability in the region. The level of integration between the U.S. Navy and Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Force is particularly remarkable. They conduct joint patrols. They share facilities. Their command staffs work side by side. It's a level of cooperation that would have been unimaginable 75 years ago, when these same nations were locked in brutal naval combat across the Pacific. The technical challenges of coalition operations continue to evolve. As navies incorporate new technologies like unmanned systems, artificial intelligence, and advanced cyber capabilities, ensuring interoperability becomes more complex. The U.S. Navy works with allied nations to develop common standards for these emerging technologies, recognizing that the decisions made today will shape coalition operations for decades to come. Unmanned systems present particular challenges and opportunities for coalition naval operations. When an American destroyer launches an unmanned surface vessel for reconnaissance, can that data be shared seamlessly with an allied frigate? When multiple nations are operating unmanned underwater vehicles in the same area, how do they avoid interference or collisions? These questions don't have simple answers, but the U.S. Navy and its partners are working through them in exercises and small-scale deployments, preparing for a future where unmanned systems are routine parts of coalition operations. Cybersecurity is another critical dimension of modern coalition operations. When ships from different nations are networked together, sharing data and coordinating operations, they create potential vulnerabilities that adversaries could exploit. The U.S. Navy has invested heavily in cybersecurity measures for coalition operations, developing secure networks and protocols that allow information sharing while protecting against intrusion. But cybersecurity in a coalition environment is only as strong as the weakest link. This requires all partners to maintain high cybersecurity standards, necessitating training programs, information sharing on threats, and sometimes difficult conversations about security practices. The human dimension of coalition operations cannot be overstated. Technology enables cooperation, but people make it happen. The U.S. Navy maintains a robust exchange program that places American officers aboard Allied ships and brings foreign officers to serve on American vessels. These officers don't just observe. They serve as full members of the crew, standing watches, participating in operations, and learning how their counterparts think and operate. When a crisis emerges and navies need to work together, these personal relationships and shared experiences make all the difference. Language barriers present practical challenges in coalition operations. While English has emerged as the common language of international naval operations, not all sailors speak it fluently. The U.S. Navy addresses this through language training programs, professional translators and interpreters aboard flagships, and standardized tactical language that reduces the vocabulary needed for basic operations. Simple, clear communication protocols help ensure that critical information gets through even when language skills are limited. Cultural awareness is equally important. Different navies have different traditions, different command philosophies, different ways of solving problems. American naval culture tends to emphasize initiative and decentralized decision-making. Other navies may have more hierarchical command structures. Neither approach is right or wrong, but understanding these differences is essential for effective cooperation. The U.S. Navy incorporates cultural awareness training into its professional military education, ensuring that officers who may lead coalition operations understand the broader context in which they'll be working. Logistics might not sound exciting, but it's absolutely critical to sustained coalition operations. When ships from different nations are operating together far from home, they need fuel, spare parts, ammunition, and food. The U.S. Navy's global logistics network supports not just American ships, but Allied vessels operating in coalition task forces. Replenishment at sea operations have become remarkably sophisticated, with American supply ships capable of simultaneously refueling and resupplying multiple Allied vessels while underway. This logistics integration is a force multiplier, allowing coalition task forces to remain on station far longer than would otherwise be possible. Medical capabilities in coalition operations have evolved significantly. Major American warships have sophisticated medical facilities and trained medical personnel. In coalition operations, these facilities support not just American sailors but personnel from Allied ships when needed. Medical evacuation procedures are coordinated across the task force. Common standards for medical training ensure that a corpsman from one navy can provide effective care to a sailor from another. These medical partnerships have saved lives and demonstrate the depth of trust and cooperation in modern coalition operations. Legal frameworks for coalition operations can be incredibly complex. International law, national laws, rules of engagement, and status of forces agreements all come into play. When a coalition task force encounters a suspected pirate vessel or drug smuggling ship, which nation has jurisdiction? Under what legal authority can force be used? What rights do suspects have? These questions require careful legal planning before operations begin. The U.S. Navy maintains a corps of judge advocates who specialize in operational law and work with their counterparts from allied nations to navigate these complex issues. The role of international organizations in facilitating coalition naval operations deserves attention. NATO has a permanent maritime command structure that enables rapid formation of naval task forces when needed. The United Nations has authorized numerous naval operations, providing the legal framework for coalition action. Regional organizations like the European Union have developed their own naval coordination mechanisms. The U.S. Navy works within all these frameworks, recognizing that legitimacy and international support often depend on proper authorization and multilateral cooperation. Public diplomacy and strategic communication are integral to coalition naval operations. When ships from multiple nations operate together, it sends a powerful message about shared values and common interests. Port visits by coalition task forces demonstrate solidarity. Joint press conferences highlight cooperation. Social media posts showing sailors from different nations working side by side build public support for these partnerships. The U.S. Navy has become increasingly sophisticated in leveraging coalition operations for strategic communication, recognizing that these operations serve diplomatic purposes alongside their military objectives. Looking ahead, the future of coalition naval operations will be shaped by several key trends. First, the number of capable navies around the world is growing. Nations that once had minimal naval forces are investing in modern warships and capabilities. This creates opportunities for new partnerships and broader coalitions, but also requires the U.S. Navy to work with partners at varying levels of capability and experience. Second, the nature of maritime threats continues to evolve. Climate change is opening new maritime routes and creating new areas of competition. Emerging technologies are changing the character of naval warfare. Non-state actors are acquiring increasingly sophisticated capabilities. Coalition operations will need to adapt to these changing threats. Third, the geopolitical landscape is shifting. While traditional alliances remain strong, new partnerships are forming and old relationships are being tested. The U.S. Navy must navigate an increasingly complex diplomatic environment while maintaining the coalition capabilities that have proven so valuable. This requires strategic patience, consistent engagement, and recognition that building partnerships is a long-term investment that pays dividends across decades, not just years. Fourth, resource constraints will continue to challenge all navies, including the U.S. Navy. No single nation can afford to maintain presence everywhere it has interests. Coalition operations provide a way to share the burden of maritime security, with different nations contributing forces in different regions based on their capabilities and interests. This burden sharing is not just economically necessary. It's strategically wise, creating a distributed network of naval capability that is more resilient and harder for adversaries to counter than any single national fleet could be. The challenges facing coalition naval operations should not be minimized. Coordinating forces from multiple nations is inherently more complex than operating alone. Political considerations can constrain military options. Different national priorities can create tension within coalitions. The slowest ship or least capable unit can limit what the entire task force can accomplish. Intelligence sharing will always involve some risk. Technology transfer raises security concerns. These challenges are real and ongoing, but the benefits of coalition naval operations far outweigh the costs. They provide greater combat power than any single nation could deploy. They enhance legitimacy and international support for operations. They allow for burden sharing and more sustainable presence. They build relationships that strengthen deterrence and provide options in crisis. They demonstrate shared values and common interests. They make the international system of maritime trade and commerce more secure, benefiting all nations. The success stories of coalition naval operations over the past several decades demonstrate what can be achieved through patient partnership building and consistent engagement. The dramatic reduction in piracy off Somalia, the effective enforcement of sanctions and embargoes, the freedom of navigation maintained in contested waters, the humanitarian assistance delivered in the wake of natural disasters. the counter-narcotics operations that have interdicted tons of illegal drugs. None of these successes would have been possible without coalition operations. As we look to the future, several priorities emerge for sustaining and enhancing coalition naval capabilities. Continued investment in interoperable systems and technologies is essential. The next generation of ships, aircraft, and weapons systems must be designed with coalition operations in mind from the start, not as an afterthought. Training and exercises must become even more realistic and demanding, preparing sailors for the complex environment of multinational operations. Intelligence sharing mechanisms need to evolve to keep pace with the speed of modern operations while protecting sensitive sources. The U.S. Navy's commitment to partnership and cooperation must remain steadfast even as strategic priorities shift. Building and maintaining these relationships requires consistent engagement over years and decades. It requires American sailors serving alongside allies in routine operations, not just crisis response. It requires investment in foreign liaison officers and exchange programs. It requires senior leaders prioritizing relationship building alongside combat readiness and modernization. Educational institutions like the Naval War College play a crucial role in preparing officers for coalition operations. International students at these institutions build relationships that last throughout their careers. The curriculum increasingly focuses on coalition operations, ensuring that future leaders understand not just the tactical aspects but the diplomatic, legal, and strategic dimensions of multinational naval cooperation. This educational foundation is essential for sustaining coalition capability across generations of naval officers. The story of coalition naval operations is ultimately a story about people choosing to work together to solve common problems. It's about sailors from different nations standing watch together in dangerous waters, trusting each other with their lives. It's about admirals from different countries working through complex coordination challenges, finding solutions that respect national sovereignty while enabling effective operations. It's about nations deciding that cooperation serves their interests better than competition, that shared security benefits everyone. In an era of increasing great power competition, some might wonder whether coalition naval operations remain relevant. The answer is a resounding yes. In fact, they may be more important than ever. The network of partnerships and alliances that the U.S. Navy has built represents a strategic advantage that no adversary can match. No other nation has the depth and breadth of naval partnerships that America has cultivated. This network provides options, flexibility, and capability that multiplies American naval power far beyond what the U.S. Navy could achieve alone. The oceans cover more than 70% of our planet's surface. They are highways for global commerce, carrying 90% of world trade. They are sources of food and natural resources. They are increasingly contested spaces where national interests collide. No single nation can secure these vast expanses alone. The future of maritime security depends on nations working together, sharing the burden and the benefits of keeping the seas free and open for all. The U.S. Navy's role in leading and enabling coalition naval operations represents one of the most significant strategic accomplishments of the post-World War II era. It has required vision, patience, investment, and commitment across multiple administrations and generations of naval leadership. It has survived setbacks and learned from failures. It has adapted to changing threats and new technologies. And it has created a system of maritime cooperation that makes the world more secure and prosperous. As we conclude this exploration of multinational task forces and coalition naval operations, we should recognize that this story is far from over. New chapters are being written every day as U.S. Navy ships and their coalition partners patrol the world's oceans. Future historians will look back at this era and judge it by how well we managed the transition to an increasingly multipolar world, how effectively we addressed emerging maritime challenges, and how successfully we maintained international norms and rules that benefit all nations. The sailors aboard those coalition warships, standing watch together in all weather and all conditions, represent the best hope for maintaining maritime security in an uncertain world. They are writing the next chapter of this story, building the relationships that will sustain coalition operations for decades to come. Their commitment to partnership, their willingness to learn from each other, and their shared dedication to maritime security embody the values that make coalition operations possible. So the next time you see news footage of warships from different nations operating together, recognize what you're witnessing. It's not just a military operation. It's the product of decades of relationship building, countless hours of training and exercises, sophisticated technology development, and the shared commitment of free nations to protect the maritime commons that we all depend on. It's one of the most remarkable achievements in modern military history, and it continues to evolve and adapt to meet the challenges of our changing world.